Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to talk about Spider-Man before Far From Home. How does he stack up to other characters? He already has his tier 3. He had a uniform last year, but where is he and how much better does he need to be in order to become meta again for either PvE or PvP? Now, before we get into all that, I want to discuss the fact that I obviously don't have a very high build for Spider-Man, namely because I don't have him at tier 3. I do have 4 and 5 star Uru, I do have a CTP of Destruction, I've got a stage 6 Power of Angry Hulk, which could be better but is not bad, and I've got a Mythic uniform with most of the options Mythic, Heroic, or Legendary. So it's not a slouch build, it's just that there's a lot of people that love Spider-Man, so it's a lot more competitive. I also have a rank 3 on his type enhancement, so, you know, I've put in some work. It's just the pesky skills that I haven't leveled up to 6. But having said that, obviously, I don't have the complete picture on how good Spider-Man is right now because I don't have him at tier 3. I do have him at tier 2, level 70, but I have all his gears at 25, so I'm pretty close in that sense. Now, I think the first question people are going to ask is, well, are you going to tier 3 Spider-Man after Far From Home? The answer to that is probably. Now, if Spider-Man gets a big enough bump from, you know, either his reworked tier 3 skill or one of his uniforms, either the stealth suit or the red and black suit, whatever the case may be, whether he gets a big enough bump that makes him viable for PvE content, or he gets a big enough bump to make him meta again for PvP, and he's pretty close to being meta for PvP, he's not that far off, then I will probably tier 3 him. But if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, or if he gets a bump but it's not enough of a bump in my eyes, I'll probably just keep him at tier 2 because of Doctor Strange, and because of Iron Man later on, and because of other characters as well. And I like Spider-Man, but if he's just not cutting it, I already have a lot of good, you know, tier 3 speed characters. I've got Deadpool for PvE, I've got Ant-Man for PvP, and I've got Luna Snow as well. So it's just kind of, it's a bit of, you know, personal preference, but I would say it's like a 60-40 chance to tier 3 him. I don't think Netmarble is not going to make him meta, but it's always a possibility. But that therein, and that is basically the question, what can Netmarble do to make Spider-Man meta for either PvE content or PvP content? So the first things first, for his PvE content, he needs all defense down. And he needs it somewhere on one of his skills. That's pretty much the only way that a speed type character is really going to push the meta. He's not going to get a huge stat bump, and he's not going to get a huge damage bump on his skills to be able to do damage like Luna Snow, so he's going to have to go the route of Deadpool. There's really no other way for PvE for him to really make an impact. Whether they add the all defense down to his Way of the Spider ultimate skill, his tier 3 skill, or they add all defense down to one of his other skills, that's really what he needs. He also needs more damage on his skills, as you'll see from the content that I'm going to do with him later in the video. But on top of getting more damage, like I would say anywhere from 30 to 50% more damage, which is a lot, he also needs at least 50% all defense that he can put down that will apply to world bosses, that will apply in PvE content in order to make him good for that game mode. For PvP, it's a little bit different. I think Spider-Man needs a little bit more survivability, and he's going to need a little bit more sort of tech. Now, in terms of tech, what I'm trying to say is he needs an ability that either has iframe ignore, and it's something that I mention a lot, but it is a really important skill, and it will make him a possibly reliable counter to Jean Grey. But on top of that, from a tech perspective, like a utility perspective, he needs a skill with some sort of lingering effect so that he can cancel it into other skills. Right now, he really only has one skill that you can cancel that will stay around, and that's his 4th skill. But you can't really combo his other attacks, and you don't really get a lot out of comboing them, and he doesn't have any super long iframes. He's got 4 or 5 short iframes, actually 4 short iframes. Iron Spider is his lone non-iframe skill, and the webbing, it just doesn't cut it anymore because everyone uses debuff, and they're especially going to use debuff after Spider-Man gets a new uniform. So if he has abilities that he can cancel, kind of like a mini Strife in a way, if he has, you know, 2 abilities that he can cancel, he can stack his damage up, and he can cancel those 2 abilities. Let's say he cancels his new 3rd skill and his new 2nd skill into 4, and he rides out that iframe. or if they give Spider-Man a long iframe, kind of like Deadpool with his 4th skill, he can stay in that iframe for a long time, and it will give him enough to sort of whittle down the enemy, and then he can kind of bounce into another iframe, and then maybe bounce back to that iframe, kind of the way that Deadpool does 4, and then he does one other skill, and then he can do 4 again, because it's such a long iframe that it eats up a lot of the cooldown for the next cast of 4. In that case, he might be better for PvP. I also think it would be very cool if they gave Spider-Man Fracture on one of his abilities. It's not going to help him against Wolverine as much, but it would help Spider-Man possibly counter other Deadpools by slowing down their healing. So I would like to see something like that possibly. And there may be some other things, like maybe he has an ability, some sort of special webbing that reduces the attack of an enemy. I mean, I know Fracture does that, but you could have another attack that reduces, let's say, attack speed, or reduces elemental damage, because he's got the webbing on his hands with the flame resistant stuff, and so that could also help. As far as the rest of the stuff for PvP goes, it's kind of difficult to gauge. You know, sometimes a character doesn't seem to be very good on paper for PvP, but then you play them in the game and they're actually very good. So just talking about the stats, just talking about the skills and the effects, doesn't really paint the whole picture for PvP. It really matters how the skills animate, how much damage they do, where the damage is during the skill, and how the AI handles the skill animations and handles the skill rotations. You know, if Spider-Man's AI is really good for PvP, that might be enough to push him over the edge if he gets a pretty good stat bump and he gets a few longer iframes. But I think long iframes is really what's killing Spider-Man, because a bunch of short iframes, even if you have 5 iframes, if they're all just 1 second long, let's say, or they're all 2 seconds long, even though you have 10 seconds of iframe, every single skill in between those iframes, like every time you have to press another skill to chain an iframe, there's a small gap in between. And that small gap in between the end of your 5th skill and the beginning of your 4th skill is an opportunity for the AI, the enemy, to interrupt you and do their iframe or their skill. So rather than having 5 iframes that are short, it would be nice if Spider-Man got one long iframe that's like 3 or 4 seconds, like Deadpool and like some of these other characters, because it helps you stall for longer, like Thanos' 4th skill with that long pull as he kind of rains the meteors down on you. And you can think of a couple of other characters like Captain Marvel who have long iframes on 4 and 3, and that really does make a big difference versus a bunch of shorter iframes. Now, as far as his PvP value right now, I know some people are quite high on him for PvP, but if we just take a look at the top 100 right now for Vibranium, and it's not very, you know, it's not very late in the week, so there's still a lot of new faces here, and it is a week that has no restrictions, so that is a worse week for Spider-Man than other weeks because you have access to all of the debuff characters, including Wasp. So this is technically Spider-Man's worst week, but out of 100 characters, I only found one. And that's right, I found one person that was using Spider-Man, and I had to scroll all the way down to the 40s. There's a guy, Spark00001. So kudos to you, buddy. You are the only tier 3 Spider-Man right now in the top 100 of Vibranium. But I do imagine we will see more Spider-Man when his uniform comes out and when he gets a buff. We're just going to have to wait and see how good that buff is. So we're going to take him into a stage 45 against Corvus. This is a pretty low stage. Actually, we'll do 50. We'll do a stage 50 Corvus. Pretty much all of my speed tier 2 characters at level 70 can do this stage. It's not very difficult. But we're going to go ahead and showcase Spider-Man just so we can see how much damage he's doing, and so we can see you know, where he lands. Now, he does have the leadership tag, which is really nice. So if I had White Fox, I could use her on the team. I don't have her, so I'm going to bring along Wiccan for 20% ignore dodge. We need, you know, 100%. And then we're going to bring along 4 more ignore dodge strikers because we do need to hit that, you know, 100%. We do want to bring someone for healing, but we need mind control, so we're just going to bring along Scarlet Witch. Alternatively, you could bring along someone like Deadpool, but I have a CTP of energy on mine, so it might skew his damage a little bit. But we're going to wait and we're going to just have to see. There's 2 things they can do for his PvE potential in terms of either, you know, giving him all defense down. I mean, I think all defense down is something that he pretty much guaranteed he needs. Oh, I forgot that he has a damage proc, so I actually procced on his first skill by accident. I procced again there. Okay, not a good start for me in terms of playing with Spider-Man. It's been a while since I played with him, but I'm pretty sure 4 cancel 5 is the way to go. But you can see there, even 4 is difficult to cancel. You have to wait pretty late. You have to try pretty late in the, you have to cancel pretty late in the skill in order to get that, that switch, and that you, to utilize the damage from 4 and 5. And even when you do it, you can miss and, you know, not proc properly. And there I just missed again. He still hasn't procced his obelisk because his CTP. But whatever. The CTP of destruction is technically for him for PvP, because it gives him that penetration. But I would say for PvE content, they can either give him all defense down on one of his skills or 2 of his skills, or they could give him a massive damage bump on his tier 3 skill. Now, I don't see that happening. I mean, I think that's less likely to happen because Netmarble seems, I thought he was going to die. Netmarble seems pretty hesitant to rework tier 3 skills, but then when you think about it, it actually, it's better for them, and it kind of goes into the video where I made, the video that I made yesterday. Man, I literally can never proc his obelisk on that 4-5 combo. And even the 4-5 combo, because of the cooldown, it's hard to land properly. So we're going to proc on 3 here. We're trying to keep him alive. We should have brought along anti-venom for the heals, but yeah, even at stage 50, he's struggling. Yeah, he's tier 2, but he is gear 25, guys, so don't cut him too much slack, because a lot of other characters, I mean, my Nick Fury, and he's got Nick Fury, so my Nick Fury could easily do this stage 50, and yeah, he's a premium character, and yeah, he's newer than Spider-Man, but man, for gear 25 with the CTP of destruction, this is very low damage, and you know, I don't know if you can tell, but based on this pace, there's no way he's going to clear this content, and he does have 100% ignore dodge with these strikers. Now, just really briefly, I'm going to show you what it looks like if I actually hit Corvus with someone who can do damage as a speed type. This is what Nick Fury's damage looks like for comparison. Now, he does have a CTP of energy, so he is getting extra damage, he is getting, you know, extra chain hit, but, you know, he's not gear 25, he's gear 20. He's got a legendary uniform rather than being a mythic uniform, but he is a much newer character. And Spider-Man generally was made for PvP rather than PvE, but what I was saying about Spider-Man and his PvE potential, it would make sense if they reworked his tier 3 skill and they gave it a lot of damage, or they gave it all defense down, because that would encourage more people to tier 3 Spider-Man, and then that would make them more money. So actually, I don't know. It kind of makes sense to rework Spider-Man's tier 3 skill in terms of not necessarily the animation, because I think the animation's awesome. But if each one of those hits, just like Deadpool's tier 3 skill, if each one of those hits had all defense down, then Spider-Man could be, you know, really good for PvE content, and then that could also help him remain good for PvP, remain, you know, competitive for PvP, because in the case of someone like Thanos, you'll be able to take down his defense enough that you can do enough damage to possibly, you know, kill him, possibly one-shot him with your next tier 3 if it lasts long enough, something like that. That's kind of a stretch, but, you know, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of Spidey and where he kind of... Where should he be? Should he be... Should he be a PvP god again, or should he move over to PvE, or should he be kind of a mixture of the two? Like, I get about half a bar when I time the proc correctly. Oh, Spider-Man died. So yeah, that's not the greatest showing of his PvE potential, but his PvE potential is pretty low. I think I could have done the stage 50 with a tier 3 Spider-Man, but stage 50 is pretty low for Corvus, especially with my raid level almost being maxed out. It's at like 475. I've got a damage proc on him. If we take a look really quickly at his details page, you know, he's got almost 50% crit rate. He's got 177 crit damage. He's maxed out on ignore defense and skill cooldown, and then he's got 66% dodge. So it's not a bad build. Spider-Man just doesn't do very much damage, and we all know that, but of course I know a lot of people, myself included, want him to be better. I do want Spider-Man to be better. He's just going to have to get a lot better for me to tier 3 him because of the landscape otherwise, with Doctor Strange and Iron Man coming up, and then, you know, next month we're going to get another tier 3 on top of that. Or maybe not, I don't know. So let me know what you guys think of Spider-Man. Do you think my ideas for PvE are good? The all defense down, the fracture, or the, no, the all defense down. Or would you rather see some of those PvP ideas like fracture, like iframe ignore, or just long iframes? It's a bit of a simplistic explanation, but I think if you compare it to someone like Deadpool and how he can kill a Jean Grey or something like that, it starts to make sense. Or even look at Ant-Man, how he has long iframes on 5 and 4, and that actually benefits him tremendously, because once you get it off, you're not going to get interrupted until the very end of the skill. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of Spider-Man. I know there's a lot of huge Spidey fans in the community. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you later today. Take care.